My name is Matthew Todd, and welcome to Inside the Scale Up. This is the podcast for founders and executives in tech looking to make an impact and learn from their peers within the tech business. We lift the lid on tech businesses, interviewing leaders and following their journey from startup to scale up and beyond, covering everything from developing product market fit, funding and fundraising models to value proposition structure and growth marketing. We learn from their journey so that you can understand how they really work, the failures, the successes, the lessons along the way, so that you can take their learnings and apply them within your own startup or scale up and join the ever-growing list of high-growth UK SaaS businesses. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Pleased today to be joined by Beza Agley, CEO of Obrizum Group. Great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
No, looking forward to the conversation. I think it's going to be an interesting one. But to kick things off, do you want to give us the kind of one-liner introduction into what it is that your business does?
So Obrizum is an enterprise learning company, and we essentially help organizations to automate many of the things that they'd previously had to do manually. So we're all about automation, adaptability, and analytics, and we're bringing that to the corporate learning sector.
Awesome. No, it sounds really, really interesting. And I want to get into lots more detail on exactly how that works, how it does that. But before we get to that, I always like to kind of wind back a bit here, that early journey, hear the kind of the founding story as well. But what was it that you were doing before deciding to found the company, and how did that lead into what you're doing now?
So I was working actually as a research scientist in the University of Cambridge, working in the Cambridge Stem Cell Institute with some really exciting emerging technologies. And as was my two co-founders, but all working at the Cambridge Stem Cell Institute, doing weird and wonderful things from biophysics to stem cell biology to genetics, genetic engineering, and really getting to see some of the coolest inventions and discoveries before anyone else. Really,
that sounds fascinating. It sounds way beyond my level of understanding, but I guess I'm wondering, how do you get from a very technical area in that field to a software platform? What's the insight? What's the leap there?
We get a lot of questions about that, actually, and it is an interesting, weird and wonderful, windy journey. But there are a lot of similarities and areas of overlap and transferable skills, shall we say, that you get from working in deep science that you can then transfer into deep tech. So an understanding of data, analytics, machine learning, statistics, and pure resilience to find an answer to a problem, which is mostly deemed almost unsolvable. So that's where we spent most of our time, trying to solve extremely difficult problems and questions. And I think that has been really tremendously helpful when we transferred into starting a new technology company where, again, you're trying to do something disruptive, innovative, where there isn't yet a known answer. So the leap isn't as great as everyone really thinks. And I think, honestly, without those skills of science and the scientific method and the resilience that we've got from being in the lab at 4 a.m. in the morning trying to crack something, without those skills, I'm sure Obrizum would not be what it is today.
Yeah, no, fascinating. I think, I can certainly get a feel for how those skills, how that approach, how that resilience would certainly be transferable to, as you describe it, a disruptive tech platform. And you mentioned, kind of a commitment almost to solving a problem that almost seems impossible to crack. So what was the awareness of the problem then that led to the shift towards the software platform?
Yeah, so essentially what was most frustrating was we saw some really exciting stuff happen. So we were in the lab at the cusp of the kind of genetic engineering revolution when something called CRISPR-Cas9 was discovered. And this was revolutionary technology that allowed scientists, technologists to edit the genome in a way that was just so much more convenient than the way scientists had to do it before. I was completely blown away by what was the obvious applications for the rest of the world in terms of personalized medicine, biotechnology, medical technologies, you name it. I mean, everything, even, this is going to affect everything that we know. And I was going around like, this is going to change the world. And others were scientists were like, well, we've always been doing gene editing and we've been telling everyone it's really cool, but no one's really listening at this point in time. So I'm going to go back. We're going to keep doing our research and publishing our papers. And I was like, no, this is not good enough. I mean, we need to make things happen faster. So if I boil that down, we saw amazing technology, amazing discoveries and innovation that was going to take another 10 to 15 years to really impact society in a way that was going to change the world. And that wasn't a technology issue. It was a knowledge, know-how, training, education issue. So, we needed to be able to put the right information in the hands of people that could do something really important with it. And that was how the company was founded, because we actually then went around manually curating information that was important or valuable and taking it to the people that would do something with it. In doing that, we proved that there was indeed a market and a need and a demand for knowledge, know-how, training, understanding for innovative, exciting new things. We just needed to then make that scalable, because getting on planes and physically, going, transporting people around is a very expensive, time-consuming, costly thing to do. So it was very natural for us to start thinking about how we might try to use things like machine learning and AI to do things like that.
What was it about that approach that you kind of manually developed, if you like, before making it scalable? What was it about that approach that was different, unique to other approaches that have been tried in the past? Presumably people have made attempts at this before, but what was it that you were able to bring to the table? The manual testing, if you like, of the market, and this is always also a good idea for other people in technology who are thinking about developing a deep tech product. Prior to actually getting in the coding, you can do quite a lot of market analysis and testing by doing things in kind of proof of concept, proof of principle way. So if you take the 3 pillars of Obrizum today, automation, adaptability, and analytics, and then we rewind the clock, what were we trying to automate? We were trying to automate the curation and understanding of the base content that holds the value that you're after. So we were going around and actually manually reading papers. We were talking to individuals. We were setting up events, and we were curating a base of really, really good information. And it was time. We were using our human brains to do all of that great curation. And of course, the result was good. We had a really great curated base of knowledge, a knowledge base, if you will, that we could then work with. So that's our first A, that we were then needed to then automate that curation piece. And then the value was also driven in, let's say we were speaking to someone at a drug company. They were interested in specific pieces of information, specific parts of a technology. So we could then personalize what we gave them out of this already curated base. We could personalize the flow of information to them. They gave us thumbs up and said, this is amazingly valuable, interesting, useful. So that was a big tick in the box. If we can only automate that bit, we've got something special. And then the very last piece is the analytics part of what we do, which is how can we measure what we've done is meaningful and has been successful, and give people a sense that they've achieved an understanding. And that's when we started to do a testing of what had gone in from our experience of flowing personalized information to individuals. And that ended up being quite successful for all parties. I see. And in developing that strategy, then, presumably you're leveraging your network to do this, but were you trying to push this out through your network, or were you being approached to help facilitate that flow of information? How did that actually work at that time?
At the start, as you can imagine, very much you're using your networks, you're going out there, you're trying to connect with individuals, you're forming networks as well as using what you already have available to you. So there was, really very much us going out to the world. And then after you start to prove yourself out there and you start to get a good reputation from being able to do this stuff in quite challenging areas or conditions, then of course it starts to transform, and you start to get more people coming to you. And so that happened relatively quickly. Like a lot of good ideas, that it did happen relatively quickly in terms of validating that we had something really valuable, and then word of mouth spreads, and you start getting people coming to you. You can grow from there.
Yeah, and are you monetizing at this early stage, or was that something you were?
Monetizing really early. I mean, it was something that we needed to do to be, that was really the proof, was in that, will someone actually pay for this stuff? And so we were able to, one of the good things that we did also in the early days is we didn't take any money out of the business. It was 100% reinvested into the company, all of it. And we made a decent size of revenue. I think we'd made $1 million before we raised $1 million. At that time, or thereabouts. And so it was serious business. It was, I think, a good tick in the box that we had achieved some degree of interesting early product market fit in terms of a concept. And then the rest of the rest of the years that followed, the 7 years of R&D that followed, was how can we automate what is which is a human skill, and something that we've been able to do with our human brains. How can we automate that and for the good of others, so that learning, information transfer can be dramatically more efficient and measurable and exciting. And then how can we do that for all areas, not just life sciences and healthcare markets? And that's what we've been spending every waking hour thinking about since then.
Fascinating. And I agree with what you were saying about that product market fit and the more manual ways of validating it before you get deep into the code. I always like to talk about problem market fit as being an important factor.
Yeah, I think that gave us the conviction as well that this was valuable, right? And if you have conviction in the underlying value, you can dig a bit deeper and take bigger swings, bigger risks, safe in the knowledge that there is something there, and you're not just throwing stuff at a wall and crossing your fingers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of that initial service-based delivery, then how far did you get? How many customers, or what was revenue? How far did you get then before you were actually able to start saying, okay, let's now invest into the tech? And what was that initial launch like?
So interestingly, we started thinking about the technology pretty much about a year into really having started to develop the company. As soon as we knew that the idea had legs, we started thinking about technology. But we are scientists, we are technologists. This was very natural to us. But we really started using the kind of manual proof of concept to help fund the technology. And as I said to you, where we got to, we were kind of really generating that our first serious chunk of money, about $1 million, before we then went out to raise funds, which was good because it helped us to have something really viable and meaningful before then we went to ask investors to also see what we could see, which is what we always asked them to see, and then we made the transfer across into really being a technology focused business. It was always part of the plan because the scalability was there. What was really difficult was actually turning off, or at least slowing down a really successful business that was successful. So there was no reason to there was no reason to stop doing that in the way that we were, other than focus and attention. And so that was quite a hard thing to do, actually, to then decide to turn off a successful service-based business in light of then pursuing a technology focused business, technology first business, all the way through for the long haul.
So the investment then was really the thing that enabled you to kind of resource what must have been a pretty complex, innovative tech build.
So we started building with our own money, which was also good because we had our kind of prototypes, we had our MVP already up and running, we had our first enterprise technology customer. So we've always sold to enterprise from the very outset. We are not a traditional ed tech company. We focused on really corporate enterprise from the outset, and that was a good education for us because we became more specialized in discovering where those issues were. And I think at that time that we were acquiring those first enterprise customers, that's when we raised our seed round.
I see, and I can see why you'd want to focus on enterprise customers given the way you've described the platform. Presumably they'll have the volume of data that actually makes that whole process and therefore platform worthwhile and more valuable compared to someone with fairly sparse set of educational material or whatever.
I think it was that there is that they have the volume, they have all of these different departments with all of these different processes, practices, procedures, content that's completely under leveraged, or they don't know what they've got at their fingertips, or what informational resources contained therein. So there's a lot of gaps that need plugging in enterprise that we could come in and help resolve in a way that is not there in education. And if you compare corporates to the traditional education system, where things are much more organized around delivering education for the purpose of delivering education, they're two very different beasts. And we were excited by the opportunity to help these organizations which were powering economies, and giving, ultimately employing all the people that are coming out of education. So there was a lot of reasons why we were excited about the corporate space. And we were even more excited when we found that nobody else had the kind of real guts to get in the trenches and figure out how to really service that industry from a learning perspective in the way that we wanted to see. So we wanted to see fantastic, deep quality technical solutions for corporates that were able to solve these kind of knowledge, training, skill challenges at scale, and not be light on the ground. Actually, give hard data and insights that you can make really big company decisions on, and that's where we were that's what really drove us. And when we entered the sector, there definitely wasn't that. So nothing was being measured at all from a learning perspective, which was crazy for us as scientists.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine how that would be, very much something that you'd expect to see and therefore want to promote. But when it came to those enterprise customers, then especially the early ones, if there wasn't really anyone tackling that problem for that type of customer that you saw in the market, how challenging was that enterprise sale if it's is so disruptive in nature?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So when we entered in, what was there already was kind of the standard linear-based e-learning, which is basically cut and paste, take stuff that was offline, put it online, and then people can just watch it or look at it. That's really where we were when we entered in, and there's still areas of the market that are doing that. So what we were really selling was new capabilities to these organizations. So we were coming in and saying, look, we can organize all of this information. We can tell you what's in it. We can label it without you having to do any of that work manually. We can do all of that automatically. We can curate this base of knowledge. And then you would like personalized learning. And we will be able, all of the programs you work with us will be automatically ready for personalized learning. And you can deliver that at scale. And you're going to get all of these measurements, analytics, and importantly, insights to allow you to make decisions about whatever you're doing in the organization. And we were then connecting those analytics with things that the enterprise cared about. So, all sorts of there's lots of different insights that pop out depending on the kind of industry that we're talking to. So it was really a sale of capability and innovation. Of course, selling innovation at a time when, 7 years ago now, or, even 8 years ago, people were not very friendly towards the idea of AI in organizations, AI in learning, AI in education. It was a really challenging sale from that perspective. But I think we were building for the future, and we knew that this stuff was coming, whether the organizations themselves or the people that we were selling to knew it. We were very confident. We had high conviction that this was coming. So it allowed us to be persistent and sell on capability and then prove that capability. So it was all about proving that you could do what you said you could do, piece by piece, until they trust you, and then building from there. So it's really kind of crowbarring the door open in the first instance, getting inside, and then running around until someone believes you, proving value, and then having more serious conversations. So it's all about, we spent a lot of time showing that we were a serious business and that we were going to turn up and that we're going to do a great job for these organizations, because startups often get a bad rap for being, fast moving and really just wanting to get their stuff across the line. And we wanted to show that we were a very serious, enterprise focused company with serious people that were going to do a really good job, and put our full weight behind it.
Yeah. And was it the kind of prior service type of delivery that then gave you that credibility, do you think, to do that?
Partially, with some clients came from some clients crossed across with us from that service business, and still with us today, actually. So that worked quite well. So that credibility piece. But you know what else it was? It was learning the processes that you need to serve enterprise that we got from doing that. So that when we turned up, we knew we knew how to talk about procurement, how to talk about the legals and contracting, how to deliver proposals in a way that would go down well with enterprise clients, and then of course how to run the kind of early customer success type relationship with those enterprise clients, all from having learnt it on the ground the hard way.
We mentioned the analytics, the insights. I want to get into that in a minute, but when it comes to kind of your primary customer or persona within an enterprise organization, then I'm kind of interested, especially as it's such an innovative product. Is there kind of a main persona that you typically work with? Maybe they're in charge of education programs, training programs that you work with, or do you actually kind of have to work your way in different areas, being so kind of disruptive?
Well, interestingly, if you look at the capabilities that we deliver, those are interesting to everyone in an organization. So and we're very much we're proud of that. So we're kind of going below. We don't really want to even be siloed in one particular corner of an enterprise, because what we're talking about is operational efficiencies that are going to put multi-millions back in the pocket of the organization, and they're going to help the company make more money and be more efficient. So that speaks to CFOs, that speaks to operating officers, that speaks to heads of HR, that speaks to the learning teams, it speaks to everyone really. So we really only need to come in with someone who realizes that those capabilities are real and needs them. So we come in at the point of need. Do you have problems with onboarding times? Do you have issues with staff retention? Do you have issues with knowledge gaps? Do you have compliance areas that you need? Do you need to make sure that things run more smoothly and people know particular things at particular times? All sorts of different knowledge requirements, knowledge, skill, capability needs that we can service. So we look for the problems, really. We look for the problems. We've got the solution, and we connect the two. It does give us a really exciting, wide base of potential clientele in an enterprise to sell into, which is also fun. And the big jump for us was our technology. Initially, we started out, as I mentioned, in the life sciences and kind of healthcare markets, but then in kind of really doing that deep R&D in the way that we did over a period of many years, we figured out a way of being able to do what we do for any area. So then we became sector agnostic, so we can sell to all sorts of different corporates as well. So we've got a really juicy, exciting market that keeps things fresh for us, and where we could then go in and do that. Can we deliver value in this industry? Yes. Can we deliver value in that industry? Okay, how far can we go? Can we deliver that in that really far-reaching industry over there? Yes, great. That's really good. That means that we're validating that the technology works in the way that in the sector agnostic way. And then other questions come up for us as a business about how much we choose to focus on a particular industry, and those are also fun discussions.
Yeah, and is that hard then to choose how to focus and divide time if you start to open up that kind of potential?
I think you go where the value is greatest, and you have to have that ruthless prioritization. So we are striving to be data driven too, right?
Yeah.
We can't just espouse it. We look at the data, and we test things, and then we look at where the value is greatest, and we follow that. We don't do so religiously in a way that actually makes us less innovative. You got to have a bit of variance in there, right? To figure out, is there something you've missed? Is there something, because sometimes things, when they go well, they can go so well so quickly. So you always want to be a bit open to what's possible out there, but at the same time follow the data and at least put some of the biggest bets on the areas which are most likely to deliver value based on what you've seen from real data and real clients. And we've done that iteratively, and we're still doing that, and I hope we continue doing that. And strategy will always change depending on the phase of the business and all of the things that it's facing at the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of that kind of phase of the business, but also the environment that we're all in and you're working in, there've been a lot of changes, disruptions over the last 2-3 years. And, we've had people on the podcast, for some people, that was not so good with all the remote working and lockdowns and everything else. For other people, it was the thing that really catapulted the success of their business. I'd be kind of curious as to what your findings have been over the last few years in terms of, changes in behavior, shifts in patterns, and how that impacted you.
Yeah, it's been already crossed through a few recessions in our time, which is interesting. And I spoke about a few of the patterns, the changing nature of public perception around AI was really interesting to see. Again, we committed. We try to look to the future and invest our time on where we think things are going to land. So make a few predictions that we feel we could build towards. Of course, the pandemic and all of the changes in remote working were a net benefit for us. In terms of people then really understanding the need to be able to deliver learning, training, work in a fully remote format. And of course, you need people to understand what they're doing, and otherwise they're not going to be able to deliver the roles and responsibilities that organizations need, and they're certainly not going to be safe and compliant in doing so, and confident in delivering and discharging their duties. So that was helping us to really do what we were doing anyway, supercharge the client understanding of technology, and it accelerated digital transformations really dramatically. So that was good for us. We also predicted a bit of a blend in the resurgence of blended training. So after everybody gets a bit tired of being fully remote, they're going to want to come back with a vengeance, back into the office, back into doing things. And we also facilitate those experiences with the digital data. So what I mean by that is organizations can do a lot of their pre-learning, their on-demand learning, personalized learning wherever they are in the world, and all of that data is coming back to them and to the organizations. And now the organizations know exactly what to focus their in-person sessions on or their practical trainings on based on the data. So instead of having to do a 5-day corporate leadership conference where you're bringing everyone across the world to do, now you can do a 1-day session, and it can be more social, but it can be targeting the areas that everybody needs from the data. Then the organization saves a lot of money, everybody saves time, and it's more, the impact of that training session is greater. So Obrizum is able to impact physical, in-person, blended or virtual training through the data that we deliver, in the normal way through the cloud. So that's been quite an exciting thing. Again, that we we predicted would happen, and we've been able to facilitate really nicely with our data.
That sounds really, really interesting. I can tell from everything you said, you very much focused on what value you can deliver now to customers, but also I would say it seems like you're equally focused on what the future would look like, and then placing some pretty decent bets on, ensuring you service that vision of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at Brisbane is the only company in the world, the only corporate learning company in the world, building and delivering and showing knowledge spaces in the way that we do. So that has been great to see the reception of that by corporates,
Yeah,
and then the value that comes with that. So that's been exciting. Having when you place a bet and it works, and you know that you can do it and you can innovate and bring something of value, that just gives you that conviction to keep doing it. You do have to soften the edges, right? So one of the things that we learn along our journey is, yes, you've got something that is immensely disruptive and super cool, but in
yeah,
order to get that embedded within an industry, you have to what we call soften the edges. So what are parts of the innovation can you relax a bit, just enough so that it's not a shock to the
I
system
see.
for the organizations. And it's a bit like carrying it into the business in a way that allows it to settle there and be used. And that was a really good learning experience for us that I encourage others to think about as well.
Yeah, so be disruptive, be innovative, but also you've got to meet people where they are to a degree in order to bring them up to
Yeah,
that level that you
exactly.
see.
So a direct example of that in Obrizum is we've got it's a bit of a continuum. So an organization can start from exactly where they already are. So in Obrizum, you can deliver linear learning if you absolutely want to or have to for any
Yeah,
reason. You can have mandatory nodes. You can have fixed things that only certain people see at a certain time. All of those kind of enterprise standard restrictive controls that some organizations may want initially.
yeah,
And then that continuum goes all the way along to fully non-linear adaptive learning that is the most kind of atomic precision predictive learning experiences that you can imagine. And an
yeah,
organization can choose to go anywhere they like along that journey, and they can start at one side and they can mix and match, and that just makes it so much easier when you say to them, you don't lose anything. This is only upside for you. So there's nothing to be lost and everything to gain, which is quite a strong position to be in when you're selling.
no, absolutely. And when it comes to like proving that value delivered, then you mentioned kind of analysis and insights. How do you actually go about doing that? What do some of those insights look like for organizations to demonstrate that?
Yeah, so we got our three pillars, as you know, but kind of analytics feeds through everything that we talk about. So when we entered into the corporate learning space, there was no such thing as content analytics. Really, it was a learning designer or a team of people within the organisations decided on what's important from their own personal experience or opinions, even, and then that's delivered to 30,000 people, 50,000 people.
Yeah,
So we were like, well, actually, let's do some analysis of all of these content bases. So our analytics start at mapping the organization's content knowledge assets, and we do that incredibly well. It's arguably a whole product in itself
yeah,
inside of Prism that does that work. And then we've now got the full understanding of what's there, and then we start to collect data on individuals as they're learning and achieving in the platform. What are their needs? What are their interests? How confident are they about things? And we do it in a way that it doesn't allow people to guess game or cheat their way through the system in a way that traditional platforms do. So
yeah,
there's none of this click through cheating. You cannot pass on a Prism by clicking through and guessing. It's impossible.
yeah,
So that makes for some great quality data, and great quality data then means when you're combining that with the organization's needs, the content assets, and all of the other things, then you can start to make that outcome great quality analytics, and from the analytics and context, you get really great quality insights. And that's where the value, I think that's kind of the tap, if you like, on where all the value flies out. And so we focus our energies on connecting those dots and giving it back in a way that people can take immediate action. And whether that action is restructuring a team or that's up to the organization to make the final decision. We're really
yeah.
that decision-making support. So we want to provide great quality data and really good quality support for decisions that they were already going to make. How about you make them now on the basis of at least having good quality, meaningful data?
Does that mean that in terms of your actual products, then there are different stakeholders then that derive different types of value from the platform? So you're kind of catering for
Absolutely.
multiple different kinds of needs.
Well, you're absolutely right, and there's value that's very different depending on who the stakeholder is. So if you're someone who's coming along to get a new professional qualification in an area, and you're really time crunched, you're already a manager working full time, you've got family at home, you're extremely busy, then your time is a premium, right? You need to be able to you want to be able to get that new piece of information, that new qualification that's going to help your career, take some of the financial pressure off when you get a bit of a promotion. Off the back of that, you want to be able to do that quickly, efficiently, without compromising on the true value of that qualification, because you actually need the information in there to do a good job. And in that case, speed to competency, us being able to accelerate that in a meaningful way for you, is going to be a game changer. It's going to be that, if you can get something done 3 times faster with Obrizum than if you did things down the traditional route without losing the actual information you actually needed, that's just a really brilliant thing to do for someone. So that's for the stakeholder on that side. For the organization, because it's more attractive to these individuals, you're going to sell more, and people are going to come along and they're going to want to buy your certification product more readily, and that's going to be great for revenue and upside. And also, you're going to really understand your customer base. What do they need? Where were the gaps? Where are the opportunities? So when it comes to you producing your next piece of training content, your new certification, as well as advising those people on what they might want to do next, you've got all that data at your disposal, and it's really good quality data to make those decisions. So we can service multiple stakeholders with the data and analytics, but in a way that's genuinely beneficial to all parties, which is the really I think exciting and a bit that we feel quite passionate and pleased about, that these kind of analytics are not they're benefiting everyone in quite a virtuous way, which is nice.
Absolutely. It really does sound like there's everyone stands to benefit from the platform, the way it works that you're describing. There's no one that loses out here. Everyone really is better off for going through this process using this technology.
That's it. And I think for us as a business, culturally, that's something we believe in very strongly, that we want to be doing something that is actually useful, meaningful. When we wake up and we put all this energy and time into inventing things, we want it to be moving the dial in a good way. It's not just about making money. There's many ways to make a quick buck, if you like, but when you can make money and actually give something of value to all stakeholders, then it's something really that you want to just go all in on and really push.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see the enthusiasm for the problem as much as the enthusiasm for the solution and the enthusiasm for the business, which is really, really great to see, and I think is critical to any meaningful and lasting success, to be honest.
Yes, agreed. And we have, I think, the fun bit about what we do. I mean, now we're very, very much a business, but the technology, the addiction to problem solving in our tech is really cool, because it's really hard to solve some of the problems that we solve. So I've got that scientific addiction to solving those sorts of problems, and it's nice to have something which is really challenging and to be able to invent solutions with the great people that we've got on our team. We've got some of the best machine learning AI talent out there, but also the best media creative talent, business talent. We're really a big mix that solves problems together, right into the customer success teams that are working with that technology and our clients. And that, I think, is quite thrilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that kind of one eye on the future and what that technology can enable, and obviously lots of talk online at the moment about AI and GPT and GPT-4 just being released and everything else, what do you see as the next kind of iteration of the future kind of in your space, in that learning and knowledge world?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, there's a very exciting, busy time with AI. We have our own views on things when it comes to responsible use of AI, but also you want to be able to be it on occasion, it's quite important to be able to understand cause and effect in what you're doing. So having something that has systems that are explainable or can be explainable is very important on many occasions. If you're dealing with very serious information, especially when there's any risk to life or anything that is to do with serious things that people need to understand, we have our own way, which has proved again to be correct in that prediction, that we can always wind back and figure out why did Matthew go down that particular road on that particular day for that particular subject, and that's was really important. All credit to our head of AI and innovation, who was doing this long before the kind of regulations that you see are in place today, and I think that that's an area that we're keeping our eye on before getting too wrapped up in areas that where other people have full control over how models have been trained, and you don't really know what's popping out. You got to exercise caution, but at the same time find the values, find the bits that it's okay and it's safe to use in the way that you might see fit. So we feel like our commitment to doing things the right way around will ultimately benefit us. And so we're keeping an eye. I think it's going to be a very exciting time. There's lots happening. The world's waking up to the idea of using technology for these things. And the great thing is that kind of our market is every company in the world, that needs to do learning and training. And we've got such a head start on everyone that even if there were another kind of 50 competitors, it still wouldn't do much to stop us at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know a few companies in the ed tech space that, are doing pretty well for themselves, are growing. But to be honest, I see a lot of very outdated tech-wise products that are still very linear, or maybe they're overlaying very simple interactions on top of media. But it still feels very dated in terms of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was shocking. It was shocking, but that our eyes lit up when we saw that, actually, because it was like, wow, here we go, because there was like the opportunities there at the time, and we've just eaten those up, and we've probably, we leapt quite far into the future initially, and what's good is that it took us some time anyway to actually make that a viable, scalable enterprise product. And it kind of we caught up with the market caught up with us, if you like, and now we've got something which can really bring that meaningful value. But it was an area that was underserviced with the highest end of tech. And it's strange because you'd think that the corporates who are doing a lot of the stuff that we use and all the technology that we play with every day would be able to take care of that. But of course, nobody can get to everything. Nobody can be 5 stars across every single pillar. And so there was a gap. There was a genuine gap. There was an opportunity, and we ran in there. It is a high barrier to entry market, by the way. So it is a high barrier to entry thing to serve enterprise. The sales cycles can be long initially. The requirements in terms of data and security are also high. It's an expensive market to tackle, which is why we felt that actually a lot of competitors hadn't gone there in the way that we wanted to, or early stage businesses couldn't because they couldn't afford to. And again, we benefited from that resilience that we could survive on not very much. And we were also making money where you could reinvest. So we could survive the time it would take to become an enterprise company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for anyone considering, what market they should be serving, should it be enterprise or not, I see a lot of people trying to start small and then move up. But then the problem is the problems they're solving aren't the problems the enterprise customers have got. And I think by having that service level up front, you kind of prove that you know the problems of that customer base at that level.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a whole world. It's a whole other world, and yeah, I mean, it really does take the time. You need to take the time to learn and understand what you're dealing with, and the kind of pitfalls. And it's not always clear until till you go through speaking to 30 different enterprises, 40 different enterprises. The patterns start to emerge. You don't get it from one or two because they're so complex. And they don't come up in front and tell you actually all the reasons why why this is going to be a challenge for you. They don't really do that. They just ask you questions, and if they hear certain answers, and then they're off, gone back to business.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it is a tricky route to go down, but definitely a valuable one where you were able to see that opportunity. So thank you for sharing some of the lessons along that way and details about the journey, as well as really giving us some really good insight into innovative, disruptive technology. And I think the overarching theme, I think, for a conversation has really been that desire to solve hard problems and just commit to actually solving the problem because the problem is worth solving.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully agree.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time today. But just before we do kind of wrap things up, are there any other kind of pieces of advice you'd like to leave our audience with today?
No, I think commit to doing what you feel is right, and that the areas where you've got high conviction, and if you've been able to prove it, and you really do feel that you're going in the right direction, don't be distracted by others. You'll get lots of advice from lots of people, but have those core areas that you believe in when you're developing something, and stick to your guns, but also be guided by the incoming data. So yeah, just be sensible, be pragmatic, soften the edges where you need to, and don't run out of money.
Sounds good to me. I think that's a great way to leave it. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thanks so much, Matthew. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside the Scale Up. Remember, for the show notes and in-depth resources from today's guest, you can find these on the website insidethescaleup.com. You can also leave feedback on today's episode, as well as suggest guests and companies you'd like to hear from. Thank you for listening.